Hi guys, so this is the next video of my Ask Ali series, and I'm gonna leave the link on the form that you can fill in and you can ask me a question, and if I choose it, I might make a video about this. Barbara is asking best advice for people with thin hair and no volume, romantic type. Rakshanda is asking how to style fine hair having round face. Thank you for the questions. So these two ladies are basically asking about, one is romantic, another one has rounded face. So basically they're talking about that they already have some width in their body and they're not probably tall and they have some softness already, and thin hair is actually grabbing away that elongation and that length that they might want sometimes. First of all, I would not use hair to correct this or that feature. We need just to make hair look not as thin. So I have several tips. Probably already know many of them because it's pretty obvious. First tip is, of course, nothing is better as a blunt cut. Don't thin out the ends. No all those layers so the ends of your hair would not fly on the wind like that. We don't need transparent ends. As far as your hair is already thin, what we need to do is we need very blunt cut. And I'm not talking about super symmetrical. Sometimes you can make it slightly elongated here on the front, or you can have asymmetrical, but elongated at the front. And actually it's making that triangle here, but this triangle is not normally very thin unless you're doing huge elongation, but this is not stylish. It doesn't look okay. How haircuts work, they need to, like, one hair should hold another hair in place, in a certain place, and this is what creates those beautiful rich shapes for our hair. And several years ago, when everybody started doing this elongated bob, they started exaggerating that feature, so at the back it was super short and the front it was super long, and when it got so long at the front, then it would hang on the wind like that, and it didn't keep its shape anymore. So those hair were not supported by the rest of the hair. We always have to think about how it's gonna act when we're going out in the wind, or when it's dried naturally on the air without any additional hairsprays or stiff products just to make it too stiff, right? So by making this or that haircut, we have to think about the movement, the air, the wind, how it's gonna act, how it's gonna interact with our hair. We need to give it life, right? So when the hair is cut very blunt and straight or slightly elongated at the front, so that triangle at the front is still not very thin, it's pretty thick, so that hair on the back is normally supporting it pretty well. When it's wind from this or that side, or you're walking, it's still holding here, and it gives that very thick front. So that already gives us a huge bonus when we have thin hair, because those thick ends, it already looks amazing. Basically, why we think that the hair is thin? Because of the ends, not because of the top normally. Sometimes because of the top, some people, they have flat heads, so they have that hair area. Hair area is when you're looking straight and you see that there's a hairline, and then between the hairline and the top of your head, which we can observe from the front, this is our hair area. So some people have just more flat head, so smaller hair area. In this case, even if she has very thick hair, sometimes it can look like she has thinner hair, but that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is still the bottom. So that was the first tip. Cut it blunt or cut it slightly elongated, or it can be blunt bob, or if you want slightly longer hair, then slightly elongated. Of course, shorter hair, any shorter hair, like starting from lob, long bob, from here somewhere and then going up. This is where you can create that very blunt cut or slightly elongated cut. Now, if you're going up here, of course, that can also give that fullness of the hair, but sometimes it's lying down at the sides. It has no support. For example, if the hair is my length, this is the area between my neck and the hair, right? You look at me and you're perceiving the outline of my look. So for you, all that is my hair. All that is my hair, which in fact, my hair is pretty thin. It's actually, there's emptiness in there, right? So when the hair is slightly below the chin, this is that area that the hair kind of occupies, and it looks fuller and thicker. And when you're cutting that shorter, then it's basically lying on your face, and sometimes it can slightly make it look thin again. Sometimes hair can also look thinner if the length is right there where your neck goes into your shoulder, because of the gravitation, the hair is lying down on our neck like that, and it starts curling upwards like that. So it's sometimes this is the stage of growing out hair. Many women probably who's growing out their hair from shorter to longer, they can notice this. This is very hard stage when many of them just go back to their shorter hair again, just because it's super hard to style them in a certain way, because it's super hard to make volume or make them straight. They just curling outwards, and they're just making the whole appearance again. They become thinner. So you whether survive this moment if you want longer hair, just survive it. I also encounter it pretty often. My hair is now short. I want them slightly longer now. But as soon as it's growing longer, and it starts growing maybe a couple of centimeters below this length, it starts curling upwards. When I want them shorter slightly, I cut maybe 1 centimeter, not 2, which is grown, but maybe 1. Just slightly, just to freshen it up a little bit. And then for some time, my hair is curling upwards like that. So this is what's happening with thin, straight hair, mostly with straight hair. And they're curling like that, but I made my haircut a couple of days ago. So after I washed my hair several times, in 10 days, this is gonna change. And they're not gonna curl like that, like they're curling right now. They're gonna lie differently. I will have thicker bottom here because now they remember that shape still. So I need some washes and I need some gravitation with new ends. So one hair depends on another hair, how they're lying in between each other. And especially I have bleached blonde hair, so sometimes I'm still growing out my sick hair. Actually, that was very unhealthy period, so I'm growing them up. You actually can check this video. I'm talking about my personal hair and my hair colors and stuff. You see, so when I'm growing them down, they slightly start breaking in the ends. When they're breaking in the ends, my hair length is different now at this stage, right? It's different. So one hair normally depends on another hair. How one hair is lying on another hair, that is determining the shape, how it's gonna lie, basically, how it's gonna style itself when you're drying it naturally. And so this is what's happening. They're thinning out themselves just because they're breaking right here at the bottom, at the ends. And they are lying differently, and they start thinning here and they start curling up slightly here. So I cut them just slightly just to make it thicker, and this gives them a new shape. Now one hair is not lying like that on another hair, but they're already lying one on each other, and it needs some time to get used to each other. That part of my hair is already more or less healthy, so I won't need to cut them as often as I do now. Now I do like once every 3 months. I cut off approximately 1 centimeter just to make them all same length, just to make them straight and all same length, just to give that very graphic, very geometric bob. If we talk about curly thin hair, that's a different situation, you see, because here you're just basically taking care of the outline of your hair and what looks better on you. You might want to cut some top hair slightly shorter, and it will create some volume on top, and your hair will be much more voluminous. But just in general, curly hair, even if it's thin, it does look more voluminous, right? You agree with me? So in this case, you just see where you should cut, where you should add a little bit, and which length you prefer. But preferably blunt cut. Again, it will make your curly hair even thicker than it looked before, because sometimes some curly hair, even curls, they can lose their definition just because their ends are thinned out just by itself, especially if you color your hair and it starts breaking on the ends. This is when there's thinning going on, and then, as I said, one hair depends on another hair, and they get used to each other in time because of the gravitation and because of the length of each individual hair lying next to another hair, which is longer or shorter. So they get used to each other, and then sometimes your curls can be like super crazy looking, like straight part, curly part, straight part, curly part. Sometimes that's happening because your hair is thinning themselves and they just start getting used to each other differently. So in this case, what you should do, just cut your hair. It doesn't have to be too much, but every couple months, every 3 months, you can cut maybe 1 centimeter, 1.5. Some of you might want to do more because maybe your hair is growing super much, but you will see how in time your curls will be changing, maybe even not one time, because still inside they can be different length. But if you do it regularly, you will see how in several months your hair shape overall will change itself. Today probably I'm talking more about thin and straight hair because, as I said, for curly hair it's not that visible that it's super thin, just because curls themselves, they create that volume. So today we're more talking about like very thin and straight hair, because when the hair is straight, that thinness is just, you can't hide it. And you can't just spend hours creating that volume and back combing your hair. It's not a solution, right? For every day, at least. So that was tip number 1. Number 2, brown hair looks the thickest. If the hair is light ash brown, it looks thinner. If the hair is honey blonde, it looks thicker, approximately like brown hair, as thick as brown hair. If the hair is super platinum blonde like mine, it can look very thin on some women if they have very thin ends, if they don't maintain that haircut regularly. That can look very thin and very transparent, especially if the hair is slightly frizzy. Sometimes that looks not very nice. And then black hair, you might think that it looks the thickest. In nature, women with black hair, normally they have very thick hair. And we kind of predict when you look at that black-haired woman that she has that thick black hair. But in fact, if a woman is with very thin hair, ashy brown color or ashy blonde color, something like that, somewhere in the middle, or even more to a blonder side. So if the woman like that is making her hair super black, you can see in front of people in life, not on pictures probably, because on pictures you can cheat a little bit, you can backcomb them, you can make them look fuller than they are. But in real life, when it's thin, other people can see the texture of the hair combined with the color. So sometimes when people like see you and they can see how thin your hair is and how black they are made. So in this case, that black hair can look even thinner, especially again when the ends are thin. Now, if you love long hair, again, cut your ends. It's very important. Otherwise, we all know that long hair, especially when the woman is making them blonde over and over again, if it's growing up to here already. Some women even have the ends that are 10 centimeters or 15 centimeters that are very thinned out already. They're so thinned, if she cuts it like 1 centimeter, it sometimes doesn't make any difference, because in a month, more hairs are starting breaking in the ends, and then it looks very thin again. So sometimes the solution would be just to cut more, maybe take care of your hair more, and then, I don't know, in 3 months it can grow pretty good, right? Some women have 3 centimeters in 3 months. You can always grow 3 centimeters and cut off 1. Grow another 3, cut off 1. In some time, you will see how thicker your hair will actually be, not only feel and not only look, but be. So if women with the longer hair, you probably should cut even more if you feel like you have very much thinned ends. Number 4, many people say do bangs, because if you have something on the front that is hanging here, or especially if it's blunt cut here, not thinned and not wispy bangs, then it's gonna make it richer. Sometimes yes, because if we look at Audrey Hepburn, for example, she hardly ever wore her hair on the sides here. She always had an updo. You could always see her ears. So this is the hair that she used to wear, and she was very pretty in it. So she found her look. And she almost always had that fringe, that bangs at the front, which was very short. So it looked very rich, right? So she always looked like she has a lot of hair. But we don't know. She might have very thin hair, but it just looked thick. So on one hand, bangs can create that thicker look for your hair. On the other hand, what is happening is you already grabbing some hair from the front, so it will already be like that. If you have less hair on the front, then it will look thinner. So if we don't have anything else hanging in here by our face, it just looks thinner. Another thing, that thin hair bangs, it gets oily all the time, because if a woman has thin hair, she can't afford normally just to grab a lot of hair here on the front, right? So she cuts just a part of it, still a small part of it, just to have something left in here, right? So it gets oily and it's just looks even thinner again. It looks small. So to me, you can do layers on the sides, for example. And it's actually the tip number 5. Do the layers or side swept bangs. Yeah, that's a good solution for that, because side swept everything that is hanging on a hair and it's actually grown up to here, for example, in the middle of your cheek, starting with the middle of your cheek and down, then it can create some like curtains around your face here. And the more hair is at the front, the more we perceive it as heavy hair. Important thing here is you cut it also, you don't thin it out too much. We don't need that light and wispy ends like that. That also creates more hair. Or you can just do it more vertical, slide like this. So you always would have some hair by your face, and sometimes if you want to make an updo, you're making that updo and you always have something hanging in here, especially for women with round faces, right? With softer faces. But I do recommend not to thin it out, because your hair will thin it out itself in the ends. Tip number 6, darker roots, lighter ends. What you can do is you can color your hair overall. Let's say you're blonding your hair. You can make it blonde overall, everywhere, and make your roots darker on top of it. So how I do it, I bleach everything, I bleach the roots. I'm taking a demi-permanent hair color and I'm darkening my roots after that. 3 or 4 tones darker. And I just apply it 1 or 2 centimeters on my roots. I don't blend it. Pretty stupid on one hand, but on the other hand, it looks pretty cool and I like it. And I like growing my hair with this. I don't do any specific things with it. The only thing I care, so that darker thing would not make dirty spots on my lighter hair. So I'm trying to separate things, but it creates that white hair here and darker hair here. So that creates a lot of volume, visual volume. That's true. But in this case, that should be maybe up to 1 inch, not more than, because if you have more darker roots, then it creates slightly flat top. It might not make your thin hair look thicker. Balayage is an amazing thing too, because normally balayage techniques, they're making pretty big pieces of hair and they're drawing pretty big pieces of hair of blonde on top. Which is great. What doesn't fit is small stripes. Small stripes will make your hair look thin and sometimes dirty and greasy. This is what's happening. In the 90s, we had those stripes. Now it's not very modern thing to do. The balayage is much more modern and much more trendy and beautiful, and because it looks more natural. It looks like kind of sun-kissed. Of course, we use now more contrasted colors for that. Sun can't do this to your hair to such a degree with such dark roots and such light ends. But just in general, this is what's happening. So that's what you can do. Tip number 7, of course, dry shampoo. If you hate the feeling of dry shampoo, you can probably try sea salt. There's like different sea salt sprays on hair. And maybe you can try to find something that has no scent. Because I noticed, like, when you have a lot of scent on your hair all the time, every day, you always feel like you have tons of stuff on your hair. But if it doesn't have any smell, and if it's nice for your scalp, and it's nice for you just to feel, because sometimes I just don't like when something is on my hair. Tip number 8 is cutting your top hair shorter. And I show it in this video, volume on top. You can also do this. I'm just taking small pieces of my hair, not much, especially on the back. At the front, all the hair is same length. In the middle, it's slightly shorter. It starts being shorter, and I take some hair and I just do the scissors and I just slide. And in this case, you don't feel like you cut a lot, and you're not left with a mullet here, right? But you still have some of that top hair is slightly lighter. That does give you some more volume, especially in the morning. I wake up and this hair is slightly standing up, so it already like more hair. It just feels more hair, not as flat. If you take my previous tip and you get some dry shampoo, or sea salt spray and spray just on this top lighter hair, and then what you have to do is slightly tousle it with your fingers, and sometimes it's enough. It's just standing up there like that and have just more volume, and then just in general gives a thicker hair effect automatically. And tip number 9, you probably will be surprised, but brows, well-shaped brows and maybe slightly darker brow color if you're, let's say, blonde, that can also create thicker hair effect, just because it's very connected. Different people have different types of their bodies. It depends on where they were born, who are their parents. It depends on ethnicity a lot. So how much hair by nature you have. So women who have darker hair, normally they are very hairy. Some women can be really hairy. They can have a lot of hair in their brows. So normally that's what we're used to, right? So if a woman has very hairy brows, she has more hair in general. It's kind of an illusion that you're creating. So let's say you're blonde. If you're making your brows just slightly darker, not super light and thin, because the size of the brows also creates some heaviness, gives it more visual weight, right? So if you are making your brows slightly more brown, let's say, or darker brown color, and not as super thin, just maybe slightly thicker, but not over the top. I'm not talking about black brows over the top or super precise, like as if they are drawn by marker, or tattooed brows. I'm not talking about this. We still are talking about pretty natural hairy brows. But let's say you're blonde, everything is light in here. Try to do a taupe brown color for your brows and just see how it goes, and make your brows maybe slightly thicker. Or if you have normal thickness of your brows, maybe it's not needed, but you will see how actually that can create illusion of more hair overall. Especially if you take all the rest of the tips from this video, you will see how much your hair situation will change. All right, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye. Subscribe on my Pinterest for 13 boards as an inspiration for the body types. Also, you can subscribe on my Instagram. All the links I'm gonna leave down below. Also, you can become my sponsor or subscribe on my Patreon for some exclusive videos, some early access to these videos, and just if you want to support me and my channel. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.